thank you, Mrs. Owl, Miss Owl, whoever, whatever it is, so I'll call the, meeting to order. We need to approve the agenda as printed. So moved. Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. Public comment on agenda items. Hearing none, seeing none. We will go with communications shared by Solid Waste Management Board members.
There was a couple that I wanted to do that.
Yes. So me and John both have been communicating with Senator Baldwin. I'll hit that one first. And anyway, it's about all the EREN legislation, all that stuff we've been listening to. Our organizations from Wickswana and Swana and everything asked us, and Chris Anderson asked us to author a letter in support of the legislation. So I said to John, well, we might as well have the exec sign that too. So John sent a memo to him, and the short story is, it's like he got chastised because we didn't ask first to support that. We usually do that as the organizations we belong to and whatever that they got their finger on the pulse of all that stuff. They understand it and whatever. If they ask for support, we normally give it to them. It is just another throttling of what this board can do. Whether, we are no longer gonna be the way it looks, an organization that can deal with that stuff. It's gonna be run through the puppy mill, something, or whatever you wanna call it. And I know I'm being recorded, but I don't care. So anyway, we ended up sending it off because John didn't want his name on it.
Well, he's on vacation this week, so I didn't realize he was on vacation. And so I just asked Ethan if he could get an electronic signature on there, and he didn't do it, so I took John's name off there and just sent it on behalf of the board, Pat and I. So.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, because you all know, the county executives deal with the day-to-day operations, okay, of county government. So I could totally understand why you would go to John and John would say yay or nay. But again, as you've indicated, he's on vacation. But it is, and as you also probably know, as department heads, County Executive Damo is the department head's supervisor, okay? So, and John Raby is a department head, so his supervisor is the county executive, just so you're aware of it, and I'm sure you are.
It needed to be timely, we couldn't wait till next week. So it is what it is. It certainly isn't hurting anything by me sending a letter to Senator Baldwin's office. They received it, acknowledged the receipt of it. Will it do any good? I don't.
I would argue the point. If you read the statutes, how it's set up, the solid waste board's authority, I'll guarantee you the solid waste board has the authority to send that letter if it wants to. The executive has no control over that, other than eliminating the board. That's the final result. I mean, if you read.
I will look at that statute, but I can tell you the statute under 59 specifically points out that the county executive is responsible for day-to-day affairs and an operations, and supervisors are, or not, I should say, department heads.
Sure.
Have to respond to him, but.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Never get involved in politics.
Yeah, you're right. Anyway, and the other.
My wife watched Red and Blue.
We also noticed the solid waste board about a fire, battery fire and whatever, all that stuff,
Yeah.
so we were. Probably, that was another mistake that we made. We shouldn't have done that.
Well, what happened was,
Was there an accident?
well, at the last board meeting, I had mentioned that one of our operators was quick acting and found a lithium ion battery powered unicycle that was smoldering in the transfer station on Saturday. He pulled it out. It immediately caught on fire, probably saved the fire in the transfer station. So what we typically do for education for those sort of things, and we're seeing more and more lithium ion batteries show up in where they shouldn't show up, is put together a press release. So we put together a press release, kind of informing the public about the importance of recycling lithium ion batteries or rechargeable batteries. If the units don't have if it's not like a leak blower or where the battery just comes right off, you need to take the battery out of the unit before you throw it in the trash and recycle the battery. So we sent that out in May 25th, and must be a slow news day last Friday because the Northwestern picked up that press release, and then there was an article like on the front page of the Northwestern about
June 1st.
June 1st. I saw it on the 2nd, yeah, but it's like, so. I mean, it was a positive article, but the headline showed the fire truck in front of the transfer station from a previous fire. And the headline was a little.
What did the headline say?
Headline said, all the county executive first before they say.
Unicycle nearly causes fire at Winnebago County Solid Waste Facility. But then it was more of a story of our press release and a reminder of why removing batteries matters, so. But, so after that story broke, it's like, oh, well, yeah, John and the exec office need to be copied on every one of these press releases, so if the press release ends up soliciting a story by the news, then
They
he's
need to be aware of it.
Yeah, they need to be aware of it, so, but we've changed our press release procedures, and they are gonna be copied on that, and you can here, so. Anyways, so, thanks, Pat. I think Paul had something.
Paul, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I pulled, a June 1st article off of
There you
the
go.
online, reporting the, fire on the 1st of June.
Yeah, the near miss. But as I had mentioned at the last meeting, shortly after our near miss here, Columbia County has a transfer station, and theirs took off, yeah, where it burned the building to the point where it's a total loss. And then
Was that caused by
they
battery?
suspect it was caused by a lithium ion battery. And then less than a week later, Columbia County's facility is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and they had this huge building with open sides on it. So it's covered, but open on the side, and they stored all kinds of baled recyclables in there at one point in time. And that entire facility caught fire and completely burned to the ground.
Well,
So,
obviously no fire protection.
yeah,
systems.
yeah, I mean, and fortunately, we have
There's a fire bug there.
fire protection in our building. Yeah, so Columbia County is in a world of perfect.
Well, aside from the building, all of the stuff stored in there had a value to it.
Well, it maybe had a value at one point, but they tried to have us take some of it at our MRF, like break the bales open and process it, but it had been sitting out in the weather, the weather.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that, and then, yeah, the mice and whatever get in there and chewing on the paper, and it's just a mess, so.
Should have buried it.
And on top of that, the Milwaukee recycles facility down in downtown by Miller Park or Ampham Field, they had a really bad fire in the recycling facility that burned for several days. They had a hard time getting it put out, so. I suspect it may be something similar to, a lithium ion battery that caught fire. You just don't know, but it's happening way more than it really should be, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, people just throw that stuff.
Yeah. Right in the trash and. Yeah, you hit it just right with the wheel, the motor, the bucket, the thing just right into flames. It's amazing.
Okay. We need to, approve the minutes of May
I have a
7th.
question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is there some reason why Mike Esther's sign is not around?
Him and Jerry,
Is he still here?
yeah, Mike and Jerry are not able to attend the meeting today.
Oh, okay.
So, Cassie didn't put them on.
Yeah.
Well,
Nothing
I
permanent.
never seen Mike Esther's sign. I thought maybe for some reason, you know, retired to greener pastures.
No.
Oh,
No.
man.
Yeah, 11.
Yeah, right. And so we need to approve the minutes of May 17th open session. So motion has been made and seconded. We approve the minutes of May 17th open session. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried.
All right.
Okay. Pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent G, Wisconsin statutes, at this point in the meeting, the board shall consider a motion to convene into closed session for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to the litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved as it relates to the Snell Road landfill notice of claim for groundwater drawdown event.
We'll need a roll call.
Did we get a second?
Second, I'm sorry, yes.
All right, Paul,
Paul.
Paul,
roll call vote.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Kevin,
Aye.
Howie,
Aye.
Doug,
aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Shauna.
Okay, we're in closed section.
And then just give me one moment, I just have to pause.
Okay. Now, Doug, we have to attempt to author a very well-crafted.
I think it's being
Not-
written as we speak.
You know, I've been at this for years and years and years. The official resolution as it's drafted is drafted by the secretary, right? Normally,
Correct.
exactly, so is it legal for council?
It's kosher, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, good, I would ask you to draft it then.
Just give me 1 minute.
Okay. Because I've been having arguments with the Secretary of Commerce Association, she said, I don't have to record minutes. I said, then what are you, the secretary? Are you crazy? I said, oh, no. Oh,
Why don't you just say move to accept the counter proposal, dated whatever the date that offer was made, and leave it at that. We don't have to.
Well,
Diligently
I was
making
gonna
up.
put, and you tell, motion to accept 5/16/23 offer made by AECom to resolve claim made against it by Winnebago County arising from a 2016 drawdown event.
that's very concise.
There you go.
Subject to.
Final documentation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, do we want to add to that?
subject to acceptable final documentation and perhaps subject to county board approval?
Yes,
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm writing it, but I don't know if you can read my writing, okay, so.
And Marianne, do we also say anything about, complete release? That would involve a complete release or no?
I don't think we need to do that here. We will do it during the discussion at county board. So. Motion to accept 5/16/23 offer made by AECom to resolve claim made against it by Winnebago County. Arising from a 2016 drawdown event subject to acceptable final documentation in county board approval. Can you read that? Sort of, kind of?
Were you a doctor before you came over? Okay.
In your ear.
Yeah. Now, while we're being recorded. And make a motion to accept the offer of 5/16/23 made by AECom
To resolve.
to resolve claim against it made by Winnebago County from a 2016 drawdown event, subject to acceptable final documentation and county board approval.
Second. Okay, that motion's been made and seconded. Kevin. Why don't we do a roll call?
Yep.
That'll probably be more efficient that way and whatever, so,
Okay. Paul,
Yes.
Kevin, Howie,
yes.
Doug,
Aye.
Pat,
Yes,
Jim,
Aye.
and Shauna.
I,
okay, that is passed unanimously, so let the record show that. Whatever, so.
Okay.
Nice job, Ron.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Unless you need me for anything more, I will sign off now. And turn
Okay.
it off.
And like that, thank Chris also for all of his input prior to we.
Yeah. Thanks for being part of this, Chris, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Turn the clock off now.
I will do. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay, well, that's off the plate, you two so far, and whatever, thanks, Marianne.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, discussion action, recommended changes being considered by the ad hoc structure review task force. I don't know how familiar all the county board people are on, John's been watching or viewing the Zoom meetings and whatever about everything that's going on. I occasionally will, dial in on that stuff and whatever, and listen to it, but I'm so biased that it's difficult for me to even watch it and whatever, and it's like, I just have some brief items that, and I think the board knows all these things and whatever, and the county board ultimately is gonna be the ones that make the final decisions on how they wanna go about this. I hope there's some questions from the current board members to the legitimacy of why this is all happening. Certainly don't agree with it at all, but I haven't been a partner in any of that discussion and whatever and stuff, so, but
I can
John,
tell you the whole history.
okay.
Briefly.
Standing on one foot.
Okay. Good.
When the county board was alerted that half the members were not going to vote or were going to run again, the county executive issued a memo through is, the finance director, Mike Collins, stating that, in order to, properly orient and help, the new, supervisors acclimate, that we need to restructure the committees so that, it would be an easy transition. And that was still the document that was used, in the rationale going forward. Even after, a year that the new members were on board. So the background is that this, and then, Supervisor, Destera introduced, at the second meeting or the first business meeting, an effort to, promote, a committee to study the structure of committee structures. Her submission was exactly the text that that Mike Collard had used a year before, to, prepare prior to the, election of the new supervisor. And so this is an effort, as I perceive it and I see it, that was initiated, by the, current administration, to go through that. When it came to push to shove, I agreed that, it's been long enough that we haven't looked at committee structures. We had the 1987, consultant, Arthur Young study. We had the, 1991, study. We had a 2001, task force, and then the 2006 personnel function review. So nothing had been done in this area since that time. And, as an overall umbrella, I felt, it's comfortable going forward with, looking at this because it's something to look at.
And Paul, it went just, and I don't want to interrupt, but it also went to judiciary because judiciary looks at rules. And my recollection, and I don't know if you were there, but I think Paul was. At one point, actually, before this new board, when Bill Wingren was chair, I believe Mike Collard went to JPS judiciary and was going to make a presentation. And again, I believe that it was not, its Chairman Wingren did not allow it to go forward. I've got to double check, but I believe that happened, but there was a package. And then when Chairman Stafford took over JPS, I believe one of the supervisors invited a Tolley's Law to come and make a presentation. I think it might have been Supervisor Defferding, or I'm not sure which one. And an attorney by the name of Jay Curtis came and gave a presentation to judiciary. And again, judiciary gets involved because per the board rules, judiciary has to basically look at, is responsible for all rules changes. And the committee structure falls within the little rules book. Anyway, that's what I remember too, but keep going. Was there any more?
Well, when you do the research and you see, from the, UW extension, government center, which is the, research,
Think tank? Think tank?
think tank, right, for the 72 counties, they concluded there are two reasons why you would restructure. The first is if you downsize the size of your county board so that you need to adjust the committees to the number of, supervisors that you have. And the second reason was, if if the county board felt that the committees were too strong in terms of their relationship vis-a-vis the county board. So from my almost 2 decades of service on this committee, it certainly is one that has a lot of power that can make a county board jealous, particularly with the $34 million of retained earnings that have accumulated under the wisdom of the structure of the board. So what you'd be looking at, and from although I tuned in to that last meeting of the structure committee, I was on the road and I did not have good connections or communication, but I did listen and watch the whole committee meeting. My observation is that the board is, or at least the task force, is kind of bent toward combining in some fashion the solid waste board in a public works type of umbrella. The problem there is, I think that if they actually want to end up doing it, they would have to dissolve the county, solid waste board. But that would be a terrible, terrible mistake, because for the 17 years that I had been on this board, we've gone from a $12 million retained earnings to a $35 million retained earnings, which is a phenomenal business venture. And it's too bad that you never accepted my proposal to buy out the airport. And we could have made them independent as well as this board being independent. So I think that you take a look at the whole picture. We're a target because you got something that they don't have a control of. And according to the think tank, that's one of 2 reasons why it was never really expressed in the resolution that Supervisor Zastara had presented, but she just put through what previously had been proposed under the previous sitting board.
Can I just add, just so, so I have been approached by, I believe he's the chair of the task force for committee structure, based on what happened at that May 25th meeting, and I am actually having one of my paralegals go through that whole meeting, so basically I have a transcript of what occurred. And my understanding was that the committee was initially looking at 3 proposals, but then they honed it down to 1 proposal involving, I guess it's 9, there may be 9 committees? And
I think it's down to 8.
is it, okay, so it's 8, I've got, again, I haven't looked at it, I have to. But the thought was that they are not, that committee is not gonna put together a resolution. They are gonna put together a report, submit it to judiciary, because again, judiciary looks at the rules. And then judiciary via my office would craft a resolution. But again, I have got to vet all of this. There is no question that committees can be combined. Solid waste is not your typical committee. I believe it can be combined, but there are ramifications we have to look at. The other piece is that judiciary usually meets the first Monday of the month. And so therefore, materials have to be submitted 2 weeks prior to that. Given schedules and holidays, judiciary decided to move its meeting to July 10th, the second Monday of the month. That means that if there was any resolution or legislation that would be considered by judiciary on July 10th, it could not be considered at the July meeting, because the deadline to submit materials is at noon on the second Monday of the month, and judiciary is not meeting until 6 p.m. on the second Monday. So it would be pushed over to August. Judiciary understood that, a discussion was had regarding that, not regarding committee structure, but the idea of legislation. So that's another piece that has to be looked at as well. But I have to, and my staff has to basically look at what was presented. I want to listen to the transcript, I have to look at the transcript. But again, my understanding was there was an effort to reduce committee structure to improve efficiency, so that you don't have all of these committees and having to go here, there, and everywhere. That was another piece of it, not with the UW extension. That was what was being touted.
But that's no rationale, that's just pull it out of the air. That's just the recommendation of the administration back with the old county board that said, we've got 16 newbies coming in, let's massage this and make it a little bit easier for them. Okay, that was the original intent. And that intent spilled over to the new board session, which was postponed to judiciary and eventually has matured in the task force. So, you know, it's, you've got to think of what the origin of this is. And it's not just something pulled from the air, it's something that was designed by the administration to accomplish whatever their end game happened to be.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so I can just make a comment. I really appreciate, adding some light to that history. And I agree with the idea, any organization or any plan needs to be periodically reviewed. Whether it's to confirm what we're already doing or to improve upon what we're doing, that's a good idea. But I also have to make the comment, anybody who is in favor of reducing the committee sizes from a logic statement standpoint is transferring the idea of reducing the size of the county board as well. Because I know when this came to a vote a couple of years ago, the idea was we have so many committees, we have to have a large, second largest in the state. I think we're up there in the top 5. We had to have that big of a county board to support all of our committees. If we do away with a certain number of committees, I would say those same people voting in that manner are also indirectly inferring they would like to see a smaller county board.
But they don't want to.
They don't want to, I know they don't fall.
I put them on the spot at the beginning of their tenure, okay, and it was universally opposed.
From a completely logic standpoint, though, taking up personal interests or whatever motivates people.
Wait till the money factor comes in at the next presentation. I think was it deferred from the next meeting or are we going to, or maybe I'll still.
We're halfway there. We're halfway there.
There was a task force to look at per diem structure for county board supervisors. And then there's a task force to look at committee structure. So Supervisor Wise heads up the task force for per diem structure. And we're halfway there. They've done the ordinance, they have to do the resolution, yeah. But that's not the committee structure, that's just, is it per diem or is it salary for supervisors?
That was my 2 cents. Thank you.
Is it a big secret who they're trying to team us up with, which committee, or what is the plan going forward, or?
Have that document?
Yeah, it's, highway and facilities. And airport is standalone. I would also recommend that Mary Ann take a look at the April 27th meeting recording. I didn't quite get through that whole meeting yesterday, but it also has some interesting discussion.
Do they have guests?
Yes, they had the Fond du Lac County Executive speak at that meeting, which was interesting and enlightening, and there's a few things that he said that would be worth hearing. I think the other thing is the comparables that they're using. None of the comparables that they're looking at, whether it be Ozaukee County or Fond du Lac County or Washington County, none of those counties have a stake in the solid waste disposal and recycling and landfill gasing. None of them do. They don't even have solid waste departments per se. So I guess it's tough. It's tough for me to watch and see, you know, the solid waste component being put under another committee. It's because it's not the same.
The only thing we have in common is we're within a
Well, yeah.
500 yards of each
border.
other, that's the only.
So, I mean,
Are you planning on going to the next task force meeting? Or you're not sure?
I'm not sure. I guess have they posted an agenda yet? As of
I have to
yesterday,
speak
they
with,
haven't.
I have to speak with,
I know they were talking about Monday the 12th,
Right,
and
right.
I think you posted an agenda 2 days ago, but.
I am meeting with Chairman Plum on Friday.
Okay.
But again, it depends on how much time I have between now and then, because I have a couple of other things I have to take.
Sure.
Yeah.
I should go back.
Go ahead.
So,
So yeah, I did create this, resolution. I did meet with Mike Collard prior. And he met with Betsy Ellenberger and myself. So we talked about restructure. The reason that I was inspired to look at it was at the beginning when we all had a unique meeting, since there were so many new people like myself. We had a rundown of all the departments and all their budgets. And personally, I was just overwhelmed with the magnitude of the $190 million, and everybody had their own take on what was necessary. And I didn't perceive that there was, I perceived that there was a need for a little bit more consolidation. I would never want watered down power from the elected aspect of things, and that's what I put in my survey, that I would always want the power of the people behind government. And that it wouldn't be, and I didn't perceive that Mr. Collard was wanting to downsize the amount of the board, anything like that. So can you have your cake and eat it too? I don't know.
Well, we missed the opportunity. The opportunity to downsize the board was when all of those supervisors decided not to run again, they could have voted to downsize the board. So I waited 10 years on the Public Safety Judiciary Committee to get that opportunity, and all the politicians from the municipalities rose up, thanks to, Tom Snyder, and, everyone was convinced that, you don't downsize the county board. And so, I was not smart enough to pick up on, going forward with that concept. That would have been my dream fulfilled.
And one more thing, if I could add, just the idea, if there were combinations, like you're talking solid waste, highway facilities, and I would encourage you to reach out to Chairman Flom, I mean, they only know what they know. But, my understanding was that the idea was not to water down the committee's strength, the department's strengths, but that all of that would be worked ahead of time and just efficiency in when they are meeting. So anyway, the way that it was explained to me, I thought it would be something interesting to look into. And when executive from Fond du Lac, I listened to that one, and you know, the things that he recommended were very interesting. And I know we're completely different, you know, our airport, solid waste and all that are different than Fond du Lac, I understand. But he also perceived that we were 10 or 15 years behind where they are at as far as efficiencies, whether that's right or wrong, but it was very interesting. So I didn't, you know, sorry to cause so much trouble by bringing that up.
Went from 36 to 18 supervisors.
Mhm.
That's when they adjusted their committees.
Mhm.
And then they went back to 25
Right.
because the 18 was not working for them.
Right,
See,
I like then when you try.
just like the half-cent sales tax. We don't accept that concept, even if it means an extra $15 million a year, to pay for the salaries, and increases for all the employees.
Well, what was interesting on the Fond du Lac County Exec's presentation on the meeting on April 27th, Marianne, is they reduced their standing committee. Okay, that are tied to county board, but they have other appointed committees that have 9 members, have citizen involvement, which in their case, in these certain, right, 4 citizens.
4 classes of committees,
Four
A, B,
classes,
C,
right.
and D.
Right, so, I mean, on the surface, oh yeah, we reduced the standing committees to 6, but there's still a lot of other appointed committees.
And they get a
appointed-
salary and a per diem for serving on the boards and commissions.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, the appointed ones have, it makes sense to have citizen involvement and perhaps maybe even more transparency because of the citizen involvement to it. And I guess that's what we have here. We have checks and balances between, you know, elected officials and citizen members that have always been part of this board since 1975. So
That's exactly why it was set up the way it
The way
was
it was.
politically, was to get the representation from citizen members and input, because they're the users and whatever, rather than go through a years ago, we were thinking of forming a solid waste authority. And that's when we went in and we merged merged the 3 counties, so there was a plan, but politics wouldn't allow it, but that would have made a solid waste authority and whatever, which would have been like a utility. And they would have made the decisions, so there would have been representatives from each county on that utility board and whatever. That was I love that idea, because I'm a merger guy, I like mergers. When you merge, you really only merge for better service. You don't merge because you want to throttle somebody or do political or whatever. You got to provide a better service. That's what government does and whatever. So it's like, that's why it's hard for me to speak on this issue, because I can only think one way. I just think you need the county board needs to put some thought into not just trying to just shrink, because that that just, I don't think it works right. I think you've got the best representation in the world. You got citizens, you got all this stuff, you got a lot of horsepower, a lot of smart people making decisions, and it's like, if we're not transparent enough, well, tell us. Tell the board that, tell, you know, and whatever, but it's, there's a communication gap. I can tell you that needs to be filled. There needs to be more trust in the organization, because that's what organizations. That's how you make organizations grow, you trust and whatever, and that's being lost. It's a big power struggle. I agree with Paul. You can look at that big sack of money out there and stuff and view it that way and whatever. I always said
The pudding is in the eating, and we have the contingency fund that was accumulated from the wisdom and the being left alone as an entrepreneurial venture by the county board. Because I always recommended, I said that you shouldn't take that grant, $40,000 recycling grant from the county board. And you nixed it, okay? I pointed out that this solid waste board has the authority to raise a property tax upon the users. You always laughed at me when
I never laughed, I warned you.
You know, it's there, but it's, you know, never a reality. And the other thing is, all of the issues and affairs, expenses have all been resolved within the solid waste board. And it's only within the last administration's tenure that we're even on the organization chart. And I lobbied for that for at least 8 years, that the old executive, wouldn't budge. And then finally, we made it, and today, our employees from the solid waste board are employees of the county. We count them in the final number. They never did that before, this county executive. So there have been a lot of enhancements. And what you have to do is you balance the good and the bad. I think the greatest arguments for the independence of the solid waste board continuation is in the hefty bank account. You put that money together, and then there were times when I argued that, you know, the county should dip in and take some of that, because that's profit from what we've been doing.
Well, it's all stayed in the solid waste side. The users were always the beneficiaries of our revenue and whatever, and that's gonna go away. Because the history of all that interreaction and all the users and all the municipalities, that's how we keep the tipping fees lower and all that stuff. If that downside pot of gold goes away, pretty soon you gotta raise tipping fees up to augment. We see how that happens at the state level. They take money out of landfill tipping fees. They tax the shit out of us, excuse me, and whatever. And then they take that money and throw it away. They just throw it at the balance of budget or something. Well, that's not what that money was designated for. What there needs, I think, you know, what the board needs to do is they need to make sure that that money is earmarked for that purpose. It's for this, you know, and that be locked in somehow, or, I mean, I don't know how the finance department can
How
do it.
many years did you serve on the board?
I lost track.
At least a dozen years.
Oh, 22 on this county board, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you know where you're talking about and coming from. You know,
And there's all kinds of, you know, there was all kinds of ideas when I went through that whole downsizing of the board. That was a contentious, horrible process, because there was so many people on the outside wanted it. downsize the board because we can manage it more, and the other argument totally was. There's nothing wrong with having more representatives because you're representing smaller areas, you know, Winnie County and all that stuff, because if you downsize the board. Winnie County and all them people, they won't have any representation, it'll all be, so there was that fear of control. You know, I don't, you know, I never agree with downsizing anything, it doesn't cost, you know, there's no big cost in it, that pittance of dollars that people get for it, whatever.
Wait till the salary gets to be 5,000 and then you get a per diem for all the committees, the commissions that.
That's government at its best. Believe me,
Well, you'll have 16 newbies that will make that decision for you.
I just get ahead thinking about it.
I would just underscore what Shana referenced, that, you know, for this board, clearly, you're concerned about this. I would think we all have, there's a public comment period. If you really want the board to hear about it for transparency, you should come whenever this is on the agenda. Is it gonna be?
Go by Zoom. Sitting there.
Yeah, they don't have to.
Patio and sit
I don't trust that Zoom, I got on a couple of Zoom calls and it was like.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell is running it, but it's
very
it's
unclear.
it's so bad, I said, I can't hear anything like that, or you know, it's like. It doesn't operate like this, like the owl does.
Well, they're trying to fix that. They're trying to fix that.
For many months talking about.
Well, I think they're
They just
talking
got a bunch of money to do it.
money to fix it.
Patty can fix it, I'll bet you. She's pretty good at that stuff. And whatever,
I'd be curious, and I'm biased as well, I don't think we're frivolous with our committee. And I don't believe Highways Committee is frivolous with their time, or we're the third group that was proposed in this merger. We're often taking an hour and a half to 2 hours, I don't know how long their meetings are, but if you get one committee together, you're looking at a 4 or 5 hour long.
Yeah.
Committee meeting.
That's true.
I wouldn't want to be on that group.
Yeah.
For a set $50 fee or whatever the new proposal comes back to be.
And just like that for the 10 years or so that I've been on this committee, and I kind of hate meetings, I actually look forward to coming to this one a little bit, not a lot, a little bit. Maybe it's just the donuts, I don't know. I'd like to think
sitting
we're
next to Mary Ann.
Yeah. But I like to think we're accomplishing something. I kind of like the fact that this isn't as political as some of the other committees are. I find it interesting how many semi-loads we send out a day, how much money we were making on the hill and so on and so forth. Boy, I don't picture. And I think Highway has a ton of their own issues. They are probably one of the busiest committees there is. I don't know how many potholes or how much they're all fixing, and to combine the two, boy, I certainly think it's a mistake. Now, that said, it's kind of good they're maybe looking at it. If you want to look at something, look at the ITBAC committee. That is the most do-nothing committee that the county board has ever been involved in, and that is because it is all politics and no common sense whatsoever. They've got a Facebook page out there that's 4 years old that has 2 followers and 2 likes. So, and there's been thousands of dollars spent to promote that. So,
Well, you're talking about IT, information technology?
no. International trade, business, economic, it's the Fond du Lac and Calumet and Winnebago County all getting together to promote all 3 counties, and it is painful to go to those meetings, so.
It existed.
Yeah, and no donuts. I don't know.
Well, I have all kinds of notes here, because I'm getting a headache.
Yeah.
There you go.
I guess would it make any sense? For me to. Participate in the meeting on Friday?
No, because I have to meet with Chairman Sloan to go through this report. And no, that has to be, I think, just Chairman Sloan and me. I think that's the best way to proceed on that.
And
then supposedly there is going to be a meeting on Monday, the 12th, but I think they scheduled that thinking that judiciary was gonna meet on July 3rd, and therefore they needed to come up with something. But the bottom line is, right now, nothing that is gonna be considered by judiciary on July 3rd will make, or I'm sorry, July 10th, will make the county board July meeting. So that's another piece. And, you know, I know oftentimes the thought is, oh, you can have a lot of different balls in the air and you do your best, but I am a big proponent of making sure we do it right. Maybe we need to slow down a little bit and do one thing at a time, because I don't want things to be dropped. So I want to do it right. Fast doesn't necessarily mean right. You can still make mistakes, but I like to look at the whole situation. That's my thing. And supervisor wise, we'll probably have to wait, given what I.
We have the ad hoc per diem committee is on the 12th. We did that so that JPS would have it on the 3rd, and we put it into the board.
Now
It's gonna be August, and I think we originally looked at September, so we're in good shape.
Yeah, because this has got to be done before the new board comes in. That's what they're trying to
Before budget, absolutely before budget. And
do.
chairperson.
Yes, I'm gonna say one last thing and I'm gonna shut my mouth. This agenda item is a discussion action item. Are we looking at taking some type of an action, like resolve or saying that we as a board are advocating for keeping the board as it is and not merging? Sending that message out or
That would work, but
Oh,
I have to step,
I'm just asking, I don't.
I have to step softly on that because, I'll probably get a phone call from the executive that that's beyond the scope of this board's authority. I disagree with them 100%. As the statute reads, we have that authority. Until the board, county board decides to dissolve this solid waste board, we have the authority and we have that's our task. That's what we're supposed to do. We shouldn't be listening to politics and all. We should continue going down, but it's getting the reality of things. It's not working that way. It's getting to be the end. So that's what my biggest fear is to take some action from this board. And then not only do I get in trouble, but John gets in trouble. Immediately he gets in trouble and I said, don't put your neck in the noose.
Right.
I mean, I don't personally care, I can't have anything come to me, where am I, it's like I'm gonna retire again, or do I serve?
That's
not-
for 30 years and.
Yeah, right, exactly, so I mean, that's where the communication comes in, there is zero communication between that executive office and this committee. There's zero, none. All it is just pick the phone up and say something dumb and whatever, and I've been trying to, I can't imagine what I would say. Probably, I would probably be eliminated from the board before the process if I go in the office and tell them exactly what I feel. But I think that's some of the things that need to happen. I mean, there needs to be a conversation. There's no communication at all. So that, and for that reason, yeah, I don't think the board has. I don't think we should attack that, because that's not the way.
And nothing has been decided. I mean, yes, they have a proposal, but nothing has been decided.
But if you don't get the right information out to people, then they make decisions on false information, So to me, it's like.
Times have changed, okay? We used to have a personal representative of the county executive at almost every single solid waste board meeting. when John Fink was here, I think there's seldom was he not at a meeting, okay? But we have the Zoom, and so the county executive and his personal assistant can view that and everything that's going on here. So we're living in the digital different world than it was when, when I came on the solid waste board back in 2006.
And I think absolutely you can do your,
I'm all for looking at, the number of committees and everything. However, I think that got pushed ahead of, I think each committee should have first looked at what they were doing as a committee and seeing if, really everything that gets done in that committee is necessary. Okay? Because I don't, sitting on this board for only a year, okay? I agree to that. But, I don't think in particular, this board, is very functional and necessary. And when there's not a valid agenda, we cancel the meeting, that's what you do. Not every board I sit on, I quite agree with that. So I think the first step should have been for all the committees to look at really what they're doing and sitting back and taking a good hard look at that. And I think this judging, trying to combine committees is just slightly premature.
Howie, may I ask, you're on highway or facilities, or are you on either of those?
No,
No. Okay.
a little bit more communication. That's what needs to be done. But anyway, I think everybody, I'm glad that we all had this discussion because it makes sense to, to listen to everybody's opinion and whatever, all that stuff. And then I'm so happy that, the response I heard from county board people or whatever, because you all are gonna make that ultimate decision and whatever. So I beg for you to protect some of the activities that we've had ongoing here in this department and whatever. Because I know if it comes down to appointing one citizen member, it won't be me. I'll guarantee you that, and I will be goodbye and whatever stuff. So anybody else got anything to say about that? We're just not gonna take any action. It just won't make any sense. All the mergers that I did, there was never discussions like this. I had all my ducks in an order. Saved millions of dollars, just like we merged, $54 million, I think it is, we've saved the users. Right, it's $54 million, and it was like, it got about that much recognition, that much, and whatever, it's like, oh, that's not a big deal. So what are you doing with all your money? That's all you hear. So what do you do with all your money? Well, we do things like save more money and provide more services and whatever. Well, can we use some of that money? No, you can't, because the law said you can't. That's basically what's being changed. I can tell you that. Go ahead.
So, Chairman, if you have the opportunity, I know that your director is doing a great job representing and participating in this, but your feedback today is very, very helpful. There's from some, there's just this perception of they just don't want to combine because they have too much money. And the little things that you said about mergers and all that is really, really helpful. And I would just encourage you to make your voice known with Chairman Flom and all that, because it's not what they're thinking. They just think, oh, they just have too big of an ego. They just, or you know what I mean? They're not saying that, but I have perceived by people that have had a lot of experience on the county board.
You know how hard
Presumptions, and it's not what,
you know how hard that is? Yeah, right, but you know how hard that is? because I'm on the polar opposite of how they're thinking. So I would go in there and I would certainly, you know, do whatever, but it ends up, whereas I get to a line, drawing a line in the sand, and I can't talk about it anymore because I'm so involved in this stuff that it makes me crazy, just thinking about how to make such dumb decisions and whatever, and it becomes very personal. And so it's like,
Well, I can speak for you if you need me. I'll just interview you and.
yeah, right, so, but
Just wanna add, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the very least, didn't we lose like $2 million this year in the overall budget? I mean, we're no longer just dumping the stuff in the hill where we were making money.
Right.
So we have to monitor this hill, we have to monitor a hill that's 30 years old.
Right.
We just had the whole discussion about the drawdown and what happens if there are some issues there. The reason we have money in the bank is we will probably, and of course, we were at one time making 3 million a year on the power purchase. And the hill isn't producing the methane, so that's eventually gonna go away to nothing, and we're just going to flare it. So every year going forward, we're gonna be losing $2 to $3 million a year, I'm thinking. So that whole, you dig a hole, you throw a bunch of garbage in, you make a ton of money doing it, and then you gotta save that money, because for the next 20, 30, 40 years, we're responsible for anything that hill creates.
Right.
So, to take that, to say, oh my goodness, you got 40 million, why don't you throw that in the general fund? Because we've got all sorts of places we can spend it. It just doesn't, and I don't know if everybody understands that whole process. So,
right, one
more
thing that
the-
happened, just stay on this committee.
yeah,
The people that are here, because that historical background and knowledge helps,
you know,
you know.
take our 40 million, but be prepared to supplement us 2, 3, 4 million every year.
Right.
For the,
Yeah,
ever.
and then, like you said, and we had our good years.
yeah,
We were a
yeah,
regional site and the gas bills were high and we're generating all this electricity and selling it to the utility. You build up the coffers, and then now, like you said, we're running at a deficit.
and heaven forbid, trying to buy some land to create another
Landfill.
waste landfill,
Yeah, I
so.
mean, Brown County spent $20 million plus developing their landfills.
Yep,
You know, PFAS legislation, who knows what's gonna happen with that? You know, we got an aging transfer station that's gonna need to be replaced at some point in time.
yep,
It's just, you got the Snell Road landfill, there's no long-term care fund for that. I mean, we have to fund that out of our operations, so if anything goes awry, we've got money set aside for that, so.
and I have the utmost respect for Supervisor Flown. I told him I thought 20 years from now, he's gonna be governor of the state. Because I think he's a very sharp person, but the flip side makes me nervous as heck that people that have been on the board for a year are trying to move forward with some decisions without perhaps having all of the information, all of the history that would go into some of those decisions. So,
Yeah, and also on the structure review task force, 4 of the 5 members of that task force are on JPS. So.
Yeah,
Whatever that
that thought, well, if I was a betting guy, I know what it needs. Well, let's move on. It's a wonderful discussion. Great, thanks for listening and thanks for contributing.
And I have an 11 o'clock meeting. I don't know, so I probably have to bow out unless you think you're gonna wrap this up quickly. And I don't wanna, so, I don't think you need me anyway. The meeting, so.
No, thank you for coming.
No,
Thanks for your time, Randy.
okay, but there's some other people who need to talk to me at 11 o'clock.
to drive fast, you might have to get a good attorney.
I'm John Jackson. You know the sheriff.
Right, exactly.
I know.
The
Thank you.
Good luck with the county board, that settlement.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
that goes easy. I can't imagine there's a lot of discussion that, you know, but
Well, I don't
stranger
know.
things have happened.
Yeah. I'll believe it when it happens. But
Yeah.
again, it's up to the board, however they want to proceed. Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. Have a good day.
Okay. So John, what is my thought process?
Well, it's something you told me you wanted added to the agenda.
Was your idea.
I wasn't exactly sure what you were gonna talk about, other than the fact that there's been another letter, to the EPA, talking about, proposed rulemaking related to PFAS in the environment, and requesting that, passive users, which, I'm sorry, passive receivers,
Yeah.
which is landfills,
Yeah.
wastewater treatment plants, yada, 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 be exempt from the CERCLA requirements. Because we don't purchase PFAS containing products. We don't use PFAS containing products. It's PFAS containing products that are in the environment that end up at our site because of, you know, the disposal aspect, that end up in a wastewater treatment plant because of, you know, disposal. So,
Now it comes back to me a
Yeah.
little bit, because that's because of that meeting that I went to in Wausau
In Wausau.
and whatever, and I listened to the DNR. And they had a flow chart. PFAS, they had a flow chart, so it's like, they never solved anything from the bottom up. It's like, so if you wanna keep it out of the environment, why don't you start plugging the holes on the bottom, because their flow chart was just like. Manufacture this and that and whatever, and then it goes to a landfill, and then they have pipes directly going into the groundwater. So it's our fault. It's landfill's fault, because they accepted,
Yep.
you know, it's the same thing as the PCBs, you know, that issue and all that stuff, and it's like, and. They need to, you know, we need to have our finger on the pulse of legislation. We don't, I mean, you need to stay involved with all that stuff and whatever, and that's how, like I do it through all those organizations and whatever that I belong to, because they are on it, they are just locked into this, because this is gonna be a huge issue monetarily. It is gonna be enormous so you gotta be careful you don't get the finger pointed at you. Or otherwise you're gonna end up paying for it in the long run, and it's not our fault and whatever, so.
yeah, so there was another letter that went out with a co-signed by 31 different entities, including SWANA and
Yeah,
Wisconsin County Solid Waste Management Association, to the EPA back in the end of May, so, we're just kind of, yeah, waiting to see what.
yeah, so when they disband the board, I hate to bring that subject, but when they do that, make sure if you're on it, to stay involved in WIXWAMA and all them organizations, or some representative, because it helps to listen to some of that dialogue that goes on there, and whatever, even though it's boring a lot of times, at least it's something you can listen to. And whatever and stuff, so that's good. Future agenda items, I don't even care. My attitude's going, I said to Jim, I said, I'm so happy that I'm going away to golf for 2 days. If I did today, my game is shot.
Yeah. Yeah. To some degree.
So.
You might be able to hit that ball harder than you.
No, that's how it works. It doesn't work that way. Anything like that, so, do you have a report? No, okay, so. Are we gonna still meet?
On the 21st?
Yeah. If there's enough-
Tentatively, I did get an email yesterday that the county board, or the county is kicking off the budget process, and they've selected the 21st at 9:30 to have a kickoff meeting, which would impacted the solid waste board meeting, but I was like,
I'd rather come here if I was you.
Yeah.
well, you know,
We're donuts.
yeah, right, donuts.
Well, what you can make that call then. I mean, it depends on if that's still, you're,
Well, I know, yeah, I know there's still, I mean, I try to structure out these agendas in advance, and there's certainly things that I've got listed on the June 21st agenda.
yeah, aren't we gonna hear about them E-REMs or something of that?
Well, yeah, there might be more to report on that.
Okay.
Not in a positive way, but.
I got faith in Cassie to run that meeting on the 21st. You can.
Well, I was gonna bring her along, because she's the budget person.
Okay, well, Kathy, will work, we're easy, but, we can go a week later or whatever, I think, I know.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've been
Flexible, so.
pretty flexible
Yeah.
that way anyway and whatever, so it's like, whatever you come up with.
Yeah, because the problem is the next meeting being July 5th.
Oh, but
I wasn't thinking that we would have a meeting then.
well, you better lock in the next June meeting.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So if we were to push it from the 21st to the 28th.
28th would be fine, and you're kind of in the middle of both of those meetings.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if everyone would be acceptable to that on the 28th.
I will not be able to make it. I'm gonna be traveling for a month.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah. Be home for a day, but
Okay.
I hope it's for enjoyment.
yeah,
Oh, well, some people are traveling for work.
and some work, yeah, there'll be some work involved.
Okay,
I'm good with this one.
okay, yeah. I'm retired, so it doesn't matter.
Okay,
So,
okay, well, why don't we just plan on the 28th then?
okay,
Then I can attend this fine budget kickoff meeting.
And
Uh-oh. Paul,
Can you say that date slowly?
28th,
Of June.
I got that on a Friday,
Of June.
July
I
28th.
think it's
June.
June.
Oh, June 28th.
The whole month.
Okay, yeah.
is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
motion's made to adjourn and seconded. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? You are adjourned, thank you.
Yeah.